Hello, and welcome back. We're so glad that you are listening, you're tuned in. My name is Shiv.
And I'm Shae, and this is the Shiv and Shae Podcast. Woo, 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 woo.
Yes, episode 3. And so we just want to welcome you all back and thank you for your support thus far. You know, we hope you enjoyed episode 2 speaking about friendship. But on the topic of friendship, last week after we released this episode, you know, it's so special speaking about Shae and my friendship. But do you know what she did to me, guys?
Wait, what?
So I was talking to her one morning. No. It's my turn now, okay, friend?
Oh, no.
We were talking, and then I literally, I ended the conversation with, oh, yeah, I love you, sis. Did she not continue the conversation and not say I love you back? Guys, this is not friendship, okay? And I had to stick it on her.
No.
I sent her a voice note and I said, don't you ever ignore me saying I love you. Can you explain yourself? Do you have anything to say?
I'm going to explain myself. 1, I didn't see the message because we was talking so much. And 2, this whole week, you've actually been bullying me. So I feel like I said it earlier, maybe, you know, we should just take a pause for my friendship, you know, for a few days. No, I'm joking. I apologise.
No,
I
we're
didn't
good.
see
We're
it,
good.
but I did say I love you back afterwards. And I say I love you all the time.
You did.
You get it?
You do. So I appreciate you, sis.
Do you guys hear it often?
Do we say it often?
What?
Yeah,
I love you.
Say, yeah, so do you actually hear it? Like, you say it to each other, not just on the phone, but
Do you
actually...
know what? I've started doing? I think this year in particular, I have made a vow to myself to say I love you to my friends and my loved ones, whether it's via text, whether it's phone call, whether it's in person, just to end with it. And some people are taken aback. I used to be taken aback by it because it's like, whoa, that's big. But with everything that's going on, I just want those who I love to know that I love them. So yeah, it's something that I've getting into.
No, I hear that. It's a good thing.
Do we say... I think I say, I love you, Shiv.
I love you too, sis. I love you.
Why did you take so long to reply?
Because anyway, wow. So as you heard, we have a different voice in here. You know, it's not mine. It's not Shae's husky voice. We have a guest today, our first official guest on the Shiv and Shae podcast. Let's give it up for Josiah and Abigail.
Woo, 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 woo.
I like the claps.
I clapped and I dropped my phone. So let us know who you are and what you do.
Thanks for having us, guys.
You're welcome.
My name's Abigail. I'm a teacher. And yeah, that's me. Thanks for having us, guys.
You're not just a teacher. I'm sorry. We're not just gonna say just a teacher. What else do you do? Because you have some magic hands. You know, you have a lot of us looking fleeky with our hair did. Let us know what you
I'm
do.
missing your magic hands.
Oh, you guys are too kind. Yes, in my spare time, I love to, you know, do hairdressing. So I fixed up Shiv and Shae, you know, a few times. So yeah, I appreciate your support, guys, and for trusting me, you know, with your hair, because I know it's a sensitive, you know, thing. So
listen, Abigail is the go-to person. Like, not only did she do my husband's wedding hair, she did my honeymoon hair, my holiday hair. So, you know, we'll do a shout out of your socials at the end of the podcast. But let us know who else is here. Who's that husky voice that we heard earlier?
No, it's not husky. It's not husky. No, I won't take that.
In it, she's rude.
I'm Josiah. Sister. Wow. Brother.
Sister of Abigail.
Yeah, brother to Abigail. I go by the name also, the King's Decree.
This is the King's Decree.
Yeah. So I'm a DJ, music producer, and youth worker as well. So I work with young people. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. And we've both Shae and myself have had the pleasure of, you know, working alongside both Josiah and Abigail in a, you know, personal setting as well as at church in a ministry setting. And not only that, you know, Josiah was our wedding DJ. Beep, 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 beep.
Yep.
So we go on shout out the socials at the end of the podcast.
So, you know, we introduced a game last week on our podcast, This or That. And obviously I won. You can't really lose at this at that. But we're going to ask you guys.
It's not a competition.
life is a competition. Shiv. So Josiah and Abigail. Guys, by the way, I'm joking. Me and Shiv.
We banter
it's
all the
just for
time.
banter. But Josiah and Abigail, I've got 10 questions to ask you. It's straight this or that. You know me, I like to think before I answer questions, but you don't have time to think. You just have to answer straight away. Are you ready?
Okay, go on.
Imagine that there's intense music playing. Doof, 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 doof.
Okay.
Cool. Are you ready? Let's go.
Who's going first? Or is it
Josiah can go first.
Abigail, should I tell you why? Abigail, I feel like you would take time to answer the question. Abigail, you're going first. I know you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Summer or winter?
Summer. I'm a summer baby, so yeah.
Josiah?
Summer?
Cats or dogs?
Dogs. I hate cats.
Dogs.
You lot are haters, man. Haters.
Phone call or texts?
Phone call.
Text.
Netflix or YouTube?
I want to say YouTube because I'm always on it.
Abigail, why are you taking so long?
Because I never had
Oh.
Netflix. Okay, YouTube. I go YouTube. I've got Netflix now, but like I didn't have it for a while, so
Makes
yeah,
sense.
YouTube.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
iPhone, and this
Come
is
on.
someone that's got an Android, so yeah.
Huh?
Eh?
I thought you was going to say Android. I said it.
No.
Anyways.
I miss iPhone, I can't lie. When I've got
Come
iPhone
back
money,
to
I'll
the-
go back.
Come back to us. Join us.
Come back. DJing or performing?
Performing, 'cause I don't know.
DJing.
Jollof rice or fried rice?
Jell-O.
Jollof rice.
Pounded jam or yam porridge?
Pounded jam.
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Yam porridge.
Yam porridge is my thing.
It's banging.
Music or science?
Music.
Music.
Really?
Coming from a science
Interesting.
teacher, yeah, music.
I know. Nigeria or England?
Nigeria. Well, yeah. To an extent.
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
But I love the sun, I can't lie. And being around family, it's just a beautiful thing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll probably have to go Nigeria. I know some people are gonna be like, "What? Why didn't I answer that quicker?" But there's parts of both that annoy me. Do you
Yeah.
get what I'm saying? So yeah.
That makes sense. All right, the last question. This is the most important question. Are you ready?
Oh, I know what's coming.
We all know what's coming. We all know.
Josiah's worked with us for too long. All right, you have to answer this. Shiv or Shae?
Siobhan.
Well done. That is the right answer. That is the right answer.
How do you spell it? How do you spell Siobhan?
Do you know what? That's a name that I've always struggled to spell, so let's just leave that one out.
Miss Science
We'll
teacher.
leave that one out.
Josiah.
Did you answer?
He didn't. Josiah's done that thing where he just goes quiet and acts like he's run away.
And then that,
We know you're there.
Jesus.
Amen.
Jesus.
He said, Jesus.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Jesus because you're both created in the image of God. How about that?
Amen.
Hey,
How
glory.
about that?
Hey,
That deserves a click. I love that. I love that.
glory be to God in the highest.
Hallelujah.
Everyone shout hallelujah.
Come on.
Anyway, so we're gonna
Come on.
get into things. We're gonna bring back the room, or as they say on Clubhouse, I'm gonna reset the room.
Reset the room. yeah.
So as you can see, reset the room. I know I'm only on Clubhouse for about 2 weeks, and I've already got the lingo. But yeah, like I said, or like the title reads, we'll be speaking today about grief and loss. And this is actually the start of a new series, and we'll be covering grief, losing loved ones, and different people's experiences about this topic. So this won't be the last time that we'll be covering this. Yeah, we figured out that this is something that we need to cover as myself and Shae and people that we know have experienced death in some scope, and especially in the midst of the pandemic and even before that.
And not only that, we have amazing people here who will share their own experience of losing loved ones. Our prayer is that their story and journey can encourage you and lift up the listeners.
So with that being said, I have the privilege and the honour of handing over to Josiah and Abigail. And like I shared earlier, you know, we've journeyed together, whether it's on a personal aspect and as well as ministry. But I've also had the privilege of hearing both of your stories, and I've seen how strong you both are in dealing with, you know, grief and loss. And we, of course, want to approach this conversation really sensitively. We know that what you've suffered in the past is a great loss. And we also know that there are people who are going through similar situations. So we want to give you guys the space to share your journey, your experience about losing your parents. So I can hand over to both Josiah and Abigail. You can give us like a backstory on your story.
All right. So I think I'll do it this way, or should we say we'll do it this way. I'll talk on losing my mum, and then Abigail will talk on losing our dad. Well, I'll say our mum. Yeah, I don't know why I said my mum, but yeah. And then kind of tie some things back into together. So we lost our mum when I was 6, or on the verge of turning 6, and Abigail was 3. I was 6 and she was 3. Yeah, so very, very young. But for me, I grew up kind of having memories of my mum. Sometimes I have like sort of, I don't know, the way my mind works sometimes, I can remember like very sort of weird things at times. So I can remember being on my mum's back, like when she would put like, you know, I have like some very strong images of being in the kitchen while she's cooking and I'm actually on my mum's back, and her rocking me and stuff like that while she was, you know, cooking. And so we lost her because she had breast cancer at the time, and then also had like additional sicknesses for about 2 years. So the constant sort of going back and forth to hospital, to a point where with the other illnesses that she had, walking was an issue. Also affected like her neck as well. So she was even her posture as a whole was quite hunched to a degree. You know, my dad is the sort of person where he understood, you know, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. So he really, like, that was a great example for me to see that, basically. So, you know, would, you know, take her to the hospital appointments and so on and so forth, and just do what he needed to do. And what was interesting at the time as well was there was still joy in the house. So, you know, even though my mom couldn't necessarily do much, but just like, you know, waking up, like one of the things that we always had to do was wake up and give my mom a kiss to the room. That was always a good thing. And then like, even when we had like family over and stuff like that, it never felt as if like my mom wasn't active with us, basically, because of the illnesses and stuff like that. So she really, I remember her even kind of showing me like, you know, like what she had to do in the mornings to like change over, like she had like certain pads that she had to kind of change every sort of morning because of the leakages and stuff like that, basically, and the infections and stuff. So she'd even like show me like, okay, like this is what's going on, you know, so you're aware of it. So it wasn't a thing of like sort of trying to put us away. And again, I was very really was very close with my mum as well. So when she did pass, it was very, very big. It was a shock, especially more to, you know, the family and everything like that. And I remember just sort of, it was weird. I didn't understand it, but I understood it at the same time. So even I remember like even at the funeral and stuff like that, just consoling my dad, like just putting my arm around him and say, "Dad, it's all right. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. It'll be okay." And I remember like one of my uncles was just kind of saying to my dad, like, encourage me, like, "Come on, like, can't you see your son's encouraging you?" And I'm like, "Dad, it's okay. It's okay." It's like, I kind of had that sort of encouraging thing about loss in a way, which was quite, it was, at 6 years old, I didn't, it's weird. But then looking back in terms of like when my dad passed, what kind of happened, the same sort of thing kind of happened again. And it was like, wow, this is actually quite interesting that happened. Or it's not necessarily a coincidence. I remember like, we spoke to our dad like a few years afterwards, you know, and one of the things that he had told us, which was one of his like lessons in terms of prayer, was, so he said he'd never forget one of our, like a family friend of ours, but he's also a pastor. He said to him, At the hospital, obviously people are coming in to come and pray and console my dad and stuff like that. And then, so he's coming as the pastor now. So obviously when it's time for him, time for prayer, everyone's expecting for him to pray, the pastor to pray. And then the pastor then turns around and says to my dad, called him like Oye, basically like short version of my surname, just like Oye, like, I want you to pray. And then my dad was like, bruh, what do you mean you want me to pray? Like, that doesn't make any sense, because like, are you not understanding I just lost my wife and you're asking me to pray? But then in hindsight, looking at it, it was like, in the midst of, death and in the midst of loss, like still being able to trust in God and pray to God. And it's not, because you don't want to have, in a sense, that distance from God in that sense there. Now, I understand sometimes not everybody's like religious or, have faith in God and stuff like that. But I think for both of us, we can definitely say having, faith in God has helped us to kind of understand life in that sense, then understand God more importantly in that sense there, and sort of understand the purpose and kind of like of how God works in a way. Do you get what I'm saying? So yeah, interesting time. Just a lot of like life. There's certain things I remember that it was, was really, really key to. I'll be honest. I said to a few friends, like, if it hadn't been for my mum passing, the way I like treat women, the way I view women, my way I even treat my sister is a reflection of that, basically. Like, and I probably wouldn't be half the person I am today if she hadn't have gone. Yeah, I don't think I probably would be the person I was now, if that makes sense. Although sometimes I do wonder what it would have been like if she was still alive and stuff like that. Either way, like, her memory always lives on. I won't lie and say it was always perfect all the way through. There's obviously times where, like, okay, parents' evening, or let's say if you had a performance at school or something like that, you wish that she was there, like, oh, because my dad couldn't make it, you wish that, other parents were like, oh, my mum's making it. Who's making it for you? Yeah, my dad's not able to make it because of work and stuff like that, basically. And then I grew up kind of having like a bit of a, let's say, resilience to knowing like, okay, do you know what? He's not here. That's what it is. That's how my life is. Yeah, I don't feel ashamed by it. I don't feel bad by it. Like, it's just the way it is. Do you get what I'm saying? And I remember like one thing in particular, and I'll pass on to Abigail. There was a time where I was walking to the park to go play like football with my friends, and there was at the time I used to watch like My Wife and Kids,
Come on.
Fresh Prince, Sister, Keenan, really? All these sitcoms basically that had to a degree this like, I think one-on-one Trouble, obviously all the shows on Trouble TV. Shout out to the real people who know about Trouble TV.
Good times, man, good times.
Yeah, like a lot of those shows there always had like, both parents in the mix basically. And then, or I know with Sister, it was a bit of a interesting kind of dilemma in terms of how it was, but they at least have like, let's say, mum and dad both there raising them. And then start to think about, even at school, like all my friends, they'd be like, mum and dad. And I was like, hold on, this is not my life. That's not me. And I'm okay with that. And the moment I kind of had that reflection and kind of, that thought, basically, it just became a bit easier to kind of be like, oh, okay, cool. Like, yeah, that's just my life. That's the way it is. And like, again, like I said before, that you don't feel shame. You don't feel disheartened, or you feel at disadvantage or anything in that sense there. So yeah, that's just the way it is. And like, but it's not to take away from the fact that God is not still caring for you, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'll end there and I'll pass it to Abigail.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I feel like what he said alone is so jam-packed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, that's the way we've been kind of brought up. Like, it is what it is. Like, this is the situation. How do we move past it? How do we, just keep going despite, the difficulties? But yeah, like, Josiah telling the story about, my mum showing him like his pads and stuff. This is actually the first time I'm hearing that. But
Wow.
I think that just kind of alludes to the kind of parents that we had.
Yeah.
They were always very open with us. Yeah, in particular, my dad, was very open with us, very transparent. And I think that kind of prepared us for his passing as well, because he was so transparent with, the difficulties that he went through when our mum passed. So, for instance, he actually went, at 6 and 3, we went to, the funeral home or whatever to go and see my mum in the casket, and I'm not sure how many parents would want to do that to their young kids. But yeah, we saw her in that state, So I think my dad's philosophy was, trying to be as open as he could be with us to prepare us for life, basically, because he knew firsthand how difficult life could be. And I guess he just wanted to prepare us in any way that he could. So yeah, our dad passed away in 2014 now. So yeah, approaching 7 years, which is actually mad. Like every, the anniversary is like, I'm like, what? How is it? How is it 3 years? How is it 5 years? How is it 7 years? Like it's just gone so quickly. But I thank God that, God has sustained us throughout this time.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like things could be a lot worse. And like every morning, or most mornings, I wake up and I'm just thankful that I've got like a sound mind, because I think, not everyone handles loss and grief, in a good way. It causes some people to go off the rails, and to go into a state of depression or suicide. And yeah, I just thank God that we've had a sound mind through this. And one thing I love, I think, again, it goes back to our upbringing and the way our parents brought us up, is that you wouldn't be able to know our story unless we actually open our mouth to tell you. Yeah, we don't live a life of like defeat. So yeah, and for me, like my philosophy has been that, yeah, we've been through a lot, but I never want that to be an excuse as to why I can't do something. So yeah, never want that to be an excuse as to why I can't progress and move forward and do what any other person could do with both parents, So yeah, that's something I'm always striving for. So yeah, Dad passed away in 2014, and to be honest, that was like completely out of the blue. It was just a normal day. I remember, I think I got back home from work that day. My dad was home, and then he said that he was going to see a friend. And then, yeah, I just remember saying, okay, see you later. But that later never came. Like, that was the night that he passed away. Yeah, and it was just, yeah. I remember, like, the day that it happened, like, the police came round, to the house, and Josiah was downstairs. And it was, like, late at night as well, maybe, like, after 12 or something.
Yeah, I think, like, 1 a.m. or something like that, yeah.
So, yeah, and, like, luckily, Josiah was still downstairs, although he was sleeping, but the light was still on, so at least, they knew that someone was home. So, yeah, they knocked. Obviously, Josiah answered. I'll let him maybe explain exactly what happened if you want to. But yeah, and then when he came up and told me, like, I was sleeping actually, and then he, woke me up, and then he was like, oh yeah, Dad's passed away. And I was like, huh? He's like, Dad's passed away. I was like, huh? Like, just couldn't process it, So yeah, like, the police, like, Josiah told me that, oh yeah, we need to, like, go see our dad.
Yeah, to the hospital.
Yeah, go to the hospital to go see our dad and, like, identify the body, basically. And I remember, like, just being so confused, like, what do I wear? Like, yeah, it was just so strange. I was like, is this enough? Like, I was in my dressing gown, like, is this enough? Do I need anything else? Like, yeah, just being so confused. Yeah, and then obviously went into the police car, took us to hospital. That was even weird, being in the back of a police car. But yeah, I just remember, like, so many emotions go through my head, like, nah, this can't be real. But then also anger, and it's like, what? Yeah. So yeah, we got there, saw our dad, and yeah, we just, like, started crying. And I remember, like, it was so strange, like, I kept needing to use the toilet. And I'm someone I always need the toilet anyway. But it was like every, like, 2 minutes kept needing to go toilet. Like, I was like, what is going on? Yeah, so that was something that was very strange. But again, like, what I loved, and this kind of goes back to the story that Josiah told about my dad being told to pray, like when, you know, my mum just passed away. I remember like, okay, we saw our dad, cried a little bit, and then Josiah prayed, you know, and like, I can't remember specifically what he said, but it was along the lines of, do you know what, if it's God's will for him to live, he will live. If it's God's will for him to die, you know, then it is what it is, kind of thing. Yeah, and I think that's always been our stance on, you know, this loss that we've experienced. Like, God's will prevail no matter what.
Yeah.
You know?
Amen.
So yeah, and I think following on from that, the hardest and another hurdle was like letting close family and friends know. Yeah, that was like, how do you break this news to them, you know? So that was a whole nother experience. And then I think just seeing other people's reaction as well. Because, you know, like I said, the way our dad brought us up kind of prepared us, you know, for what we experienced. But then for other people who necessarily haven't had that loss before, and these are people that are older than us, people that we look up to, that we call auntie and uncle, and then they're breaking down in front of us and we're like consoling them. It was such a strange thing. And I remember like one time when we had like, you know, obviously bare people come around your house to console you. And then I remember there was just one time that everyone was like really, really down. And like Josiah said again, our house has always been like a house of joy and peace. And it continues to be, thank God. But yeah, that time when people came around and then everyone was just so sorrowful and down and everything. And then Josiah just came in when it was like, do you know what, nah, you know, like dad wouldn't want this, you know, like let's just rejoice and be thankful for the times that we did have with him and everything. So yeah, again.
It's funny, people are confused actually at that point.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Because when I'd said, like, I just looked around the room and obviously you had everyone's head down and stuff like that, basically. And it was just awkward. There's like, obviously, with like losing someone and grief, and because of the shock of it, basically, it's the fact of people can't necessarily comprehend that this person had gone. So someone who, you know, until this day, we still get people that don't have a bad word to say about our dad, and it's encouraging to hear that. And so I understand like the shock of someone like that. And obviously some people will say stuff like, nah, do you know what? God, take me instead of this man, because this man was too good to have gone. And so when I'm looking around my house, yeah, obviously there's just this vibe in the house. I'm just like, I can't function in this. I really can't function in this. And I just obviously just said like, listen, like, guys, I know this is a house of peace. Everyone can attest that when you've come here, you found joy, you found peace being here, to the point where sometimes you people don't even want to leave. Like, and so for you to kind of like, you know, I said, I will not have my house be, you know, this house be a house of like sorrow, and despair. Like, no. What we're going to do is, look, we're going to trust in God. And I said, look, if anything, you may not understand now how God works, but in due course, we'll understand why it was that God would have it this way. You may not understand it right here and there, but like, and it's hard to even comprehend it because you're still getting over the shock of it. But I just said, listen, you lot will understand, you know, you lot will understand in due time. Don't worry, you lot will understand. And when I said that, there was just like a confusion in it, because I was like, hold on, wait. Is this an act that you're trying to, like, it's funny because when the whole like situation, like the whole preparation of the funeral and everything, everyone thought it was an act. Because as soon as we came back from the hospital, it was funny because we literally kind of like, we both like tried to, because obviously it was like 1 a.m. We came back, I think about something like, we came back like next morning, obviously like later on in the morning, probably like, let's say about 8, 9 or so, I want to say something like that. It might have been even earlier, to be honest. I remember us sitting down on the sofa. We had like a blanket and was like, all right, cool, we're going to go sleep. Literally, it's like we put our head back, literally closed our eyes, knock on the door. Then from then on for about, let's say 24 hours straight, like basically, yeah, people started coming in and so on and so forth. No, actually, even before that, so we had a family friend who was staying with us. Who's one of my dad's friends. he was staying with us, and we could hear some crying. But we thought, oh, it's probably our neighbours or something like that. Because our neighbours at the time were elderly. So we just thought, I might be... And it sounded almost like a bit of a laugh to a degree. But we couldn't necessarily understand. Because it was just sounding muffled anyway. And then we're like trying to figure out, where's this noise coming from? Because it just sounds a bit too close. And then went upstairs and found out it was our family, our uncle who was staying with us at the time. And he was just crying. Like God, like, why did you, like, my friend, this is like my close friend, why is it him? So we consoled him, and then was like, okay, then we were like, okay, let's now go to sleep. Literally then, put our head back on the sofa, then closed our eyes. The minute we closed our eyes, doors open, everyone starts coming in and stuff like that. And then literally everyone that came to the house, they thought they were coming to console us. What ended up happening is that every person that came through the door, I met them at the door. If I didn't meet them at the door, I think Abigail would meet them at the door. So it's like a case of we met everybody at the door. Like, so they were kind of a bit like shocked to be like, hold on, wait, what? I'm meant to be coming. They thought that we would be on the sofa crying our eyes out type of thing. So they came, I think, with the mindset of being ready to console us. And a lot of the time, it's just a case of like, as they were speaking to us, they just broke down, and then, or when they were praying, they broke down, and then we just had to end up like, consoling them and stuff like that. I remember a couple of times we were looking at each other like, like, this is a bit awkward, because obviously like we're just consoling them sort of thing. But all throughout that time, and even up into the funeral, everyone was just thinking, okay, at some stage they're gonna break. At some stage they're gonna break. At some stage they're gonna break. But then it was just like, because like as Abigail said, in terms of when we're at the hospital, and I said basically, if it's the will of God for my dad to die, he'll die. If it's the will of God for him to be alive, he'll be alive. Because I know some people will come to the hospital and start praying and so on and so forth. So like, I just knew it was going to happen. But the minute I said that, that's when I then felt peace and was like, okay. And it was funny because I felt like I kept seeing my dad in the corner, just like looking at us, kind of just being like, okay, cool. I see what you guys are doing. Like, right, you guys are doing, like, I'm looking back at my work and being like, right, okay, I've done well, actually. I've done well. So there's random moments here and there where I just, like, I could see him just kind of just being like, okay, just that nod of approval. Like, okay, I see you. So yeah, just consoling everyone. And it was just, it was interesting.
Thank you so much for sharing. There's a couple of things that you guys said, and the first thing you said was that there's always joy in your house. Like, I've been to your house, obviously. You carry joy. Like, whenever you walk into a room, I think of Josiah in times of ministry or when you're DJing. There's such joy that comes from you. Like, people are so comfortable to be around you. And I just thought that was you as a person, but I've now learned that actually that's something that your parents installed in you, and that's so amazing to hear and know. And it's the same thing with you, Abigail. We've had, I think, especially in the last year, we've spoken a lot more, and it's just that your desire, you get excited when you talk about the worship that you've done, or when you talk about work. There's like a glistening in your eyes, and that's amazing to see. And yet again, it goes back to how you've been brought up. And you spoke a lot about faith in God, but also people coming to support you now. Obviously, when someone passes and you hear the news, like, I know for me, I always struggle with what to say. I think when it's friends, it's a little bit different. But when it's a relative or a parent, I'm like, God, for me, I'm like, God, I don't get it. Like, I've never experienced this. And people struggle with what to say. What encouragement would you say to people who are struggling to find something to say, or what is the best way to support someone when grieving? Because, you spoke a lot about you helping people even though you lost your parents, or your father in particular, and it's kind of weird because you expect something different. But yeah, what would you say to someone who wants to support someone who's grieving? What's the best way of encouraging them?
Do you know what, it's a funny question, because I feel like even though we've been through what we've been through, when I hear, that someone else has experienced loss, sometimes I don't even know what to say myself. And I still find myself getting into that, not that trap, but that space where you're still saying those common phrases like, oh, I'm sorry for your loss and sorry to hear, you know, I still find myself in those, you know, saying those things to people.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, and the reason is because even though we've been through what we've been through, everyone experiences loss in a different way.
Definitely.
So I can't approach the situation as if like I'm an expert on the topic and I know exactly what to do to get through your feelings. No, because, you know, the way I dealt with it is going to be completely different to the way they deal with it, you know? So for me, it was enough just to retreat and pray and get closer to God, and that helped me to overcome. But for others, that's not, you know, necessarily what will work for them. But I think for me, one thing, you know, like to be on the receiving end of you know, loss, is that I think it's showing that you're consistently there for someone.
I agree. I agree.
So, because obviously at the beginning, everybody's going to be influxing, you know, messages and calls to that person that's experienced loss. I think what really sticks is whether, you know, that person is consistently there, you know, once that 1 year anniversary has gone, once that 2 year anniversary has gone, and like just consistently showing your support. So for instance, and it's funny, again, this is something our dad prepared us for. Like, he told us, you know, that when our mum passed away, you know, everyone was there at the beginning, you know, showing that support, showing up to the house. But then he was like, oh, but just, you know, wait and see how many people remember the first year anniversary, you know? And then we actually saw that, you know, the rapid decline, you know, in the amount of people that were reaching out to us. But at the same time, like on the flip side, you got people that have really stepped up, you know? So even if it's just consistent calls, you know, now and again, just consistently check in, or if it's little things that you do here and there. So for instance, I don't know, just going around that person's house to just help out, you know, with, I don't know, housework, just, you know, little things that you can do to show that you're there, that you're present, and that you're willing to help them, I think. Just any little ways that you can think of that will ease their burden. Someone else that went through a similar situation with us, and then I remember hearing her story, and then I just remember reaching out to her. I think we just arranged like a meetup basically where we could just share experiences and just talk. So I think just little things like that where you're showing that you're going out of your way and it's not just the typical phone call, the typical text. But yeah, over the years, consistently showing that you're there for them, basically. It's kind of a long-winded answer, but yeah.
That's good, thank you.
No, it makes sense what you've shared. Like what you've shared makes a lot of sense because I think for me, in my experience of losing family members or supporting someone who has lost family members, I've just had a great, you know, sense or urgency to be present. You know, obviously you have different relationships with different people, but, you know, there are some who are sort of like dear family, dear friends who are really like, you know, you held really closely to your heart and you just have a sense to be present, just to support, you know, that person, you know, remembering the anniversaries and remembering, you know, Mother's Day to send them a gift and something. So I think what you said is really key. And, you know, you touched on something earlier about family were coming over and you were kind of consoling them. But I just wanted to ask, you know, how were things for you guys in terms of, you know, family being like stepping in, like did you have family members sort of step in on a like parental role, you know, offer support and counsel, that kind of thing, and something that's always gone through my mind, thinking of like, you know, if I was to lose my parents, say if I was a lot younger and stuff, like things like the house, you know, their belongings, bills, like that's the kind of thing that goes through my mind, like what happens there. And then I know you guys were, you know, older and probably working at the time as well, but, you know, how were things for you in terms of like, you know, the logistics and, you know, family stepping in as sort of like as a parental role?
So this is the thing. So since like our mum passed, one of the things that we had, so my mum had like, 6 sisters? There's 7 in total. Yeah. So at one stage or another, we'd always have them, let's say at least one of them will come and spend some time at the house. So we spent even like a summer or come on holiday. So we've got quite close family in terms of, so like we've got in a sense basically like 6 mothers basically. In terms of family, we've always been quite close with, you know, mum's side of the family. Not so much as our dad's side, just because of distance in terms of being in Nigeria and stuff like that, basically. But then, yeah, in terms of the family knit, it's always been sort of very close. So we never felt as if like we didn't necessarily have parental support.
And dad's side is getting closer.
Yeah.
I think like the more that we've been back to Nigeria as well,
Yeah.
so it's given us that opportunity to get closer to dad's side as well.
Yeah.
So that's been a nice thing actually. Yeah, getting to know them a bit more as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in regards to like, okay, with like the house and stuff like that, there was elements of, boy, you just got to step up and just kind of go with it. I think for the first, let me say for me anyway, I'll probably say the first, like, let's say 2 years after my dad passed, 2-3 years, I felt like I was just going in autopilot, because you step up to kind of making sure you want to do stuff and, okay, make sure this is in place, that's in place, this is in place, that's in place. When that was happening, the only sort of solace I had to a degree was driving in silence in my car, and just to be able to process my thoughts and to process like what's actually hear what's going on in my head. So, because if you have sometimes at times like, okay, you can have music in the car or you listen to something and it just, you end up sort of becomes a distraction to knowing what you're actually thinking. So even like sometimes now there's times where I can drive for time and not realize, I've realized that let's say 3/4 into the journey that, oh snap, I haven't got the radio on, because I've just been so used to doing it, sort of thing. Like I've done 2-hour drives where I've just had nothing, just literally the sound of, let's say, what's going on around has been basically in a sense the music, but it's just been more intentional in terms of just thinking on my thoughts and what's going on. One of the things, again, it goes back to what Abigail was saying in terms of like how our dad was preparing us. So one of the things that helped us was, and I'll be honest, was uni. So our dad encouraged us and said, listen, none of you lot are staying at home when it came to uni. Like, I need you to go far away. I need you to go explore life. Do you get what I'm saying? So I went to Southampton, then done my 3 years, came back, and then literally tag team my sister. Then she was off to Brighton and spent her 3 years. So like in terms of, and as well, some of the things in the house that has started saying to us, okay, once we obviously had a job, all right, cool. Now you take this ownership of the bill. You take this. So I'd obviously been paying bills, obviously, whilst we're at uni. But then when we came back, it was like, okay, now we're having a footing in terms of what goes on in the house, basically. We're just, because we had the intention of like, we just want to ease the pressure off because we're in a space where we can ease the pressure off our dad in that sense there. So, all right, even if it was a case of like paying for the like mobile phone bill, all right, if it was I took, let's say, the gas and electric, that was my thing basically. And, you know, other bills. So it's just a case of like taking off the burden. But then in doing that, now when we look at it, it doesn't feel weird. We didn't have to quickly adjust to it and feel like, oh snap, we ain't even got enough money to do this. Like, oh wow, there's not, because we're already in that mindset and already in the process of doing that already in that sense there. So it was just fairly sort of, there's certain things that, okay, obviously we'd have to have a discussion in terms of, all right, who's taking what? Okay, might need to cut back on this. All right, can we cut back on that? Cool. Can we do this? All right, cool. And then have a conversation and kind of get things done. But again, that thing was always in motion already. So like Dad kind of said, yeah, this is what, you know. And the funny thing is for him, it was always like, sometimes he might do it in a joking way. So he might say like, for instance, to my sister, like, oh, so is this what you're going to be doing in your husband's house? Like, yeah, it's a slight, small joke like that. But then kind of set a thing in our head of like, actually, true. When you are, you know, when we do have our own families now, what are we going to be doing? And I remember like, our dad did say to us one time, you know, I appreciate the help you give to me in the house. So then hearing that was, it's like, it kind of put an element of, wow, actually, we're being acknowledged for doing good, if that makes sense. And the thing is, he didn't have to necessarily do it, but then because we felt the weight of, now you've done a lot for us, and this at least this is the way we can pay you back. At least, like, obviously we had intention to do much more, but at least for now, if we could start with this to relieve the burden, at least this is something in that sense there. So hearing him say that was such a big, it was a big thing for us.
And just in terms of like from a logistics point of view, I just remember there being like so much paperwork, so much back and forth, like like you underestimate like how much it costs, you know, to just send off documents. But obviously you have to do like recorded delivery and all that, and just the cost of that just piling up. But yeah, one thing that I remember like very early on we had to make sure we did was like, you know, for instance, like going to the banks just to notify the banks that, you know, dad has passed away, just to close his account. So that was like one of the one of like the real real life things that you had to experience, you know, once that person's passed. Another big thing was like clearing out his stuff as well. I know a lot of people, they wait to do that, but that was something that we did quite early on. I think and it was actually like a family friend that she encouraged us to do that, like not wait too long before we sort out his stuff and just, you know, either give it away to charity or send it back home to Nigeria. So and I know like a lot of people, they would wait a while to do that, but I think, I don't know, for us, I don't know why, but we just did it and it wasn't too bad, I guess. But those are like two things I would say that are like very real, you know, in terms of like, okay, yes, you're grieving, but this also has to be done, you know. So those are the things I would say.
I think that's so good. Like I'm just reflecting on that last point you said about moving stuff. Actually, I've got friends who've passed over 10 years ago, and actually the house still looks the same as it was 10 years ago. But I think that moving on, it sort of signifies that, okay, I'm coming to terms with this, if that makes sense, although it's not easy. Just as you were speaking, the first question you asked, you said this, Josiah, you said this is what your dad taught you. In the midst of death and loss, still trust in God and pray to God. And then you also said, having faith in God has helped us understand life. So I'm going to ask this question, and you sort of alluded to it already, but did losing your parents affect your relationship with God? And would you say you're in a better place now? Affect normally has a negative connotation, but you spoke of, both of you have really spoke of a positive reaction to your relationship with God. So how has the passing of both your parents shaped your relationship with God?
I'll say this, right, and it may sound a bit funny, but you understand it. So losing our parents is supposed to affect our relationship with God. If it doesn't affect your relationship with God, it doesn't make any sense. Because when we think about all the names that God is and what we, you know, profess to say, God is a healer, God is a comforter, God is He's with us, He's Emmanuel with us, He's all these names, He's our provider, and so on and so forth. Unless you have been through these things, you can't call Him that.
Come on, Pastor Josiah.
Or if it's stop that. Or even if it's a thing of, let me not say you can't call Him that, but you won't truly understand why people call Him that. You won't understand yourself why He Himself said He is that. So for God to say, I am that I am, is like going back to say, listen, I'm everything that you need, whatever you need it to be, you fill in what you need me to be, and I will be that. So if He comforts, you know, the lost and strengthens the weak, I need to have lost. I need to have been weak for me to know Him as that. Yeah. So there's a song that obviously says, you are my strength like no other. I need to be weak in order to feel that. Sometimes what usually would happen, because there's always a thing of questioning God, why? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And majority of the time when that happens, basically, there's always going to be a silence from God. Because one, it's funny because there's a Nigerian chorus, or let me say African chorus, that says basically, unquestionable, you are the Lord. Unquestionable, you are the Lord. Africans chorus always have this thing of repeating itself, basically. But when you deep it, it's like, who are we to question God? He has every right to be silent in that moment. And reason being is because even in the moment of loss, you're not meant to understand why. If anything, I'll say there's no point you understanding why He went, or there's no understanding why this person went, why that there's no point understanding it right now in that moment. In order for, so like, I'd even say, and I've said this to a few friends, half the stuff that I'm doing now, I wouldn't be doing if my dad didn't go, if my parents didn't go. Because there's an element of like, you know, sometimes like a safety net to a degree. So, and on top of that, it's like, I need to know God for myself, you know.
Yeah.
Like the Bible says about, you know, everybody working out their own salvation. So I can't, it's very good for me to know the God of my fathers, or my father, should I say, as Africans would say, God of my fathers, you know, or my forefathers and all those things there. It's good for me to even say, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. Great. The God of Moses. It's great for me to know that, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I still need to experience God for myself. I can't depend on that. So my parents' prayers have brought me thus far. Where are my prayers taking me to in that sense there? So, and it's the thing as well, is that sometimes, you know, okay, do I miss my dad praying for me? 100%. Do you get what I'm saying? But then I remember prayers that, you know, he did pray for me, and how that is basically being answered today in that sense there. So when family and, you know, when people are seeing me, they're seeing a result of the answered prayers in that sense there. So like now I'm at a stage where I'm like, okay, I need to be able to pray for certain things myself. And I can't always run to dad and say, dad, pray for me for this. Because then I'm not understanding myself that, God has given me power. So if I'm not praying the right prayers, or if I'm not praying at all, or trying to know God for myself, it almost defeats the purpose. It's always a continuous thing, but it's part of the relationship in that sense there. I'd even say this. So the relationship that you guys have with your parents now is a lot different, or even say it's a lot stronger, or let me say it's a lot different, because some it might not be strong, it depends. But it's a lot different from how you were as kids, because there's a certain level of understanding now. There's a certain level of questioning you have now, a certain level of wisdom that you have now, that you actually want to find out certain things. Do you get what I'm saying? There's a certain conversation and a certain level of appreciation you have towards even the smallest things. So I thank you for doing this for me. And it's funny because a lot of the things that, let's say, our parents would have done, that let's say they would have been like sheltering us from when we were smaller, we now actually, as adults now, are like, actually, do you know what? I appreciate what you done back then, because the effect that it has on me now is actually greater in that sense there. Do you get what I'm saying? I actually understand, you know, like you. And the funny thing is as well, they might have even felt like, I'm probably doing bad by doing this, but the effects that it had going forward means so much more to you than anything else. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, interesting question, because I feel like over the years I'm just learning more and more about myself. So as of late, I've had a few friends that are really going through it, unfortunately. But then in hearing their story, like, I've come to realize that with me, for some reason, I feel like I've got a lot of like internal strength. And not to like toot my own horn or anything, but I've realized that for me, like over the years, it's enough for me just to retreat and then spend time with God. Like, I think that's one thing that this whole experience, particularly losing my dad as well, that has really taught me, is that I need to put less dependency on people and more dependency on God. So when, you know, difficulties do come up, I try and take it to God in prayer, you know, as my, you know, first port of call.
Yeah. No, you both shared just such amazing, you know, your story, and I've just been sort of here listening just intently, and it's been amazing. And, you know, I just want to end with like one final question. You know, everyone deals with grief differently, everyone processes it differently. I find that with every passing, it's always different. You know, for you guys, what are some things, you know, whilst you're processing or processed your grief, what are some things and places or people that have helped you on your journey? You know, for those who are listening, they might be seeking a bit of advice or wisdom on what they can turn to or who they can turn to. Even things like grief counselling, you know, there are things that we can use, there are mediums that we can use to tap into to get that support. But, you know, what worked for you guys, and do you have any any thing that you can share with our listeners.
So I think for me, like what I've learned about myself over this time is that I feel like I'm able to internalize, take it back to God in prayer, and then, you know, through listening to what God says, I can, you know, find solutions or what I need to do next to overcome, you know, whatever I'm struggling with. And I know that's not the case for, you know, for a lot of people. But I'd say alongside that, so as well as just like over the years, I've learned to depend more on God and less on people. Because, you know, you can be disappointed by people. You know, a lot of the time you expect them to be there to show that support in certain capacities, and then and then they just and then they fail you basically, and then that can also have, you know, even more effect on the way that you feel. So yeah, I feel like over the years God has taught me just to put less dependency on people and more on him. But yeah, to accompany that, I would say things that work for me is when I know, you know, that the stress is starting to build up, or I'm starting to feel a little bit of, you know, pressure and difficulty, I just retreat. So for instance, I remember like booking my first solo trip. I think I decided maybe at the start of the week that I wanted to go away, and then by the end of the week I was out of the country. Yeah, and it was just a time for me just to get away from everyone and everything, and again just to have that quiet time with God. I'm very random, and I think it surprises Josiah sometimes. Like I just come out with stuff and then he's like, where did that come from? So even like, I don't know, booking like a spa break, you know, going away by myself, seeing loads of couples there, but I didn't care, you know, it was just, you know, time for me alone. So I think, yeah, I kind of enjoy my own company because it allows me time to process my thoughts, and to really strategize, you know, on what's the problem, or identify what's the problem. Okay, it is what it is. How do we overcome this? What's the next step moving forward? But then also having like a strong support network. So I don't have a lot of friends, but the friends that I have, and I always reflect on this, they're such good quality friends. Yeah, and these are people that have like always been there, like, I don't know, just random thoughts, you know, come to my recollection of like how they've been there supporting me. So I remember, you know, like when my dad passed away, and then, you know, two of my friends coming down to visit. One of them, you know, she was still in Brighton at the time because we went to uni together. So yeah, just her making all that effort to come and see me. Yeah, just having a really strong support network, I think. Yeah, you don't have to expect it from a lot of people, but as long as you've got like a core set of people that you can rely on to a certain extent, or, you know, that are there when it matters, you know, and that can give you that advice and support when you need it. I think that's what's been helpful for me. Josiah, what about you?
I think one of the biggest things for me was you need an outlet for your emotions. You need to find something that is positive that allows you to. And when I'm saying outlet for your emotions, I'm not just saying just something to take your stress out and cool. Yeah, that helps, but also something that allows you to process them, because you need to be able to identify in that moment, I'm feeling like this. Then be able to look back and go, wow, okay, I was feeling like that. When I feel like that, I know it's because this happened, certain things triggered me, and yeah, that's why I felt like that, basically. So when those feelings arise again, it's like, okay, I just know what I'm feeling. And then again, just knowing that you don't want to sometimes affect people's mood at times, or do I even say people's interaction with you. Because if you are hurt and not giving yourself the space to be seen, to be heard and valued when you're hurt, what ends up happening is that you hurt people. So hurt people hurt people. When you're in a hurt space like that, things that should be coming towards you don't end up coming towards you, because what you push to the forefront is hurt. And people don't want to sometimes be around hurt, especially within the times that we're in now, like with so many people that have, you know, lost loved ones. We're in a space and time where, you know, having so much alone time has been almost a bit overwhelming. And it's okay to not be okay. Again, I think it's just a thing of, like I said, just realizing what, in a sense, triggers off those, you know, emotions. So even if it's a thing of like writing down things, yeah, for some people it's writing down, for some things some people speaking it out. For me, it was just a case of I needed to be silent in my drive somewhere, basically, wherever I was going, and just hear my thoughts out. I'll never forget, there was a day where I was on my way to work and I was just crying on my way to work. And I was just there like, what's going on? Just the reality of certain things like when I get married. I think what it was is, I think it was around my sister's birthday. It was around my sister's birthday. And I was just like, right, this is like the first year that dad's not here. Then I started to think about, like when she gets married, I'm going to be the one to walk her down the aisle. I was like, this is a lot. This is, oh my days. Like, can I, again, I always had like you kind of had a vision of, in terms of like how things were going to be. So my role at my sister's wedding was always going to be a case of like, I'm going to be her one to, to run around for certain things and kind of like help them enforce some certain things, basically, and like allow my dad to chill and, just really enjoy the moment and so on and so forth. But now it's not that. And I'm just like, yeah, this feels a lot. And just overwhelmed, just overcome by emotion. It's like, this is a lot. Then obviously I had to just dry my eyes and be like, walk into work and go, good afternoon, madam. How can I serve you today? How can I help you? And it was just like, but again, because I sat down and processed those things, I was like, okay, do you know what? First of all, some of these things haven't even come yet.
Yeah.
I'm just putting a scenario already. The same way I didn't think my dad was going to die like that is, some of these things hadn't even come yet. So you just, put in, as my dad used to say sometimes, like put in sentiment where it doesn't need to be, you don't need to put sentiment. I was just like, okay, just got to sometimes just rein myself back in and be like, okay, cool. I'm overcome by emotions today. These are the trigger points. All right, cool. I know them for next time, basically. And as well, because what you don't also want is like, let's say with things that are going on right now and like, things that we watch and stuff like that, there can be a lot of things that trigger off emotions in you. And you don't want to kind of, in a sense, basically be open to that.
Sorry, can I touch on that?
Yeah, 1 second.
So yeah, it just reminded me that, so around the time our dad passed, it was so funny. Well, not funny, but it was weird that on TV, on EastEnders, yes, I still watch EastEnders. It was when... Oh my gosh, it was when Lucy Bill died. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then that process of them like doing the funeral and all that stuff. Some of these things, like you just watch them willy-nilly, not really taking it in until you're actually in that position. And then everything just becomes so much realer to you. And so, I just remember that, watching that scene of them, like, I think, when they had the funeral and then they were doing like the procession or whatever with the hearse. And it was also real, like just seeing them act out those emotions. It was like, yes, like I understand where you're coming from, kind of thing. So it's mad. And so that's one thing I give EastEnders. They're very real, as messy as it is, like the storylines. They are real.
Love it.
Thank you, EastEnders.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's funny that she said that as well, because even I remember watching that, I was thinking, I remember the first thought that came to mind was, I don't know how much a funeral costs. I was like, yo, I said at that time, I was like, do I even have the money to do it? Do I have to get a loan now? Bruh. I thought a funeral cost 10K. I thought a funeral cost 10K, and I was just like, I don't have 10K like that. And this is what's funny. I'm gonna share this as an encouragement and testimony. So the cost of the funeral, me and my sister did not put 1 penny towards the cost of the funeral. Amazing. I paid for like underwear, basically. So what it was this. Yeah, to dress our dad. So we put our dad in like white native, basically. So it was like, with the whole white theme. Yeah, that's the only cost. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but that's the only cost that we had. And what's funny is, in terms of like contributions and stuff like that were coming, it was like beyond. What's mad was this? It was even like, and I'll share this candidly. So I thought a funeral would cost 10K. We ended up getting just over 10K in contributions.
Oh, amazing.
So I'm just there like, God, is this how you do things? I'm like, okay, cool. I get. What's even crazy was, even like, I remember the day we went to go and pay the funeral directors. Like we went there, was like, hey, here's your money. Gave him a check. What's funny was, when we went there, they were just about to send off our invoice. I was like, I don't need to send the invoice. Here you go.
Amazing.
There you go. Paid that. Then I think whilst we're clearing out stuff, I remember looking at like the cost of like what our dad had to pay for a funeral for my mum and what we paid for our dad's funeral. And it was just like, raw. Obviously times have changed and stuff like that there, but it was almost like in a sense doubled what we had paid for my mum's funeral. It was just amazing. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, again, just sort of leaning into God and leaning into just trusting him. The thing about like in the midst of like when you have grief and loss, like it's, you know, when they say about having faith as small as a mustard seed, just the thing to be able to say, do you know what? Okay, God, I don't know how, don't know when, just yes, in your hands. Sometimes that's all it is. That's all it is. To see God honor that was just amazing.
I love what you guys have said. There's so much. There's so many gems in that. A key thing that stood out to me is, Abigail, you said actually, let's watch out for your trigger moments, because actually when dealing with grief and loss and all of that, actually a whole 10 years later, you can smell something or see something and it brings you back to that place. You know, you still have to overcome that. Do you get it? And I love that for you, watching EastEnders actually helped you. Josiah, you spoke about the cost of a funeral. Actually, until you have to pay for a funeral, you never think about the costs. I remember when my nana passed away, and even when my best friend passed away, when I saw how much things cost, I was like, what? Like, how do you prepare for that? And I think I've learned from that is I want to put money towards my funeral so that it's not, God willing, if I have children, it's not a burden on them. But actually knowing what I love about your story is actually there was a support network around you and God provided. And Josiah, you said earlier, how do you know about God until you go through things? And actually through your story, you've seen that God is the provider. We've seen that God is faithful. We see that God is there. God is all of that. So guys, honestly, thank you for sharing your story. Like, I'm so encouraged. Even as you've been speaking, I'm going back to moments where I've lost friends and going through my emotions. I'm like, oh yeah, this is when God's done that, or this is how I feel, and this is how I've processed it. It's actually made me, it's confirmed about when I'm supporting people, actually the best thing I can do is just be present.
Yeah.
And it's, Abigail, you said it, being there for the first month or up to the funeral was great, but actually what happens 2 months after the funeral? How are you supporting a family? And I think that's so important. So thank you guys. I really pray that as people listen to this story and as you continue to support people who may be going through something similar, like it's a ministry that you have, do you get me? And I hope that you really begin to support people in ways that you don't imagine. And, you know, I love the fact that I remember when someone at church who went through a similar situation as you two, you guys were the first person I reached out to, and Abigail said I've already messaged them, and I love that because when you guys support people, you never do it in a public eye, but you're always willing to support people, so keep doing it. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what happens. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you as well. You know, I want to echo what Shae has said. You guys are absolutely amazing. And I think, you know, your journey, you know, qualifies you to speak to a particular audience. You know, in the same way Shae said how you've reached out to someone who's been in a similar situation. You know, I've seen you guys do that as well. And I think it's just beautiful that you can, you know, share your wealth of wisdom as well. And we always close our podcast with a prayer. And, you know, I'd love it if one of you guys would pray for our listeners. You know, maybe there's someone who's listening who's lost a loved one, or someone who's, you know, feeling alone or hopeless. Could you give them a few words or a few words of a prayer or even some closing thoughts?
Just acknowledge the fact that everyone goes through grief and very differently. So you have to acknowledge that. And like, so the way that me and Abigail have gone through may sound probably a bit strange, or may not necessarily identify with that, and that's understandable because of, let's say, the way our parents have raised us. We may not necessarily have had that at home, so we do acknowledge that. And I think the main thing is what sometimes you will find is that with the way grief takes people, sometimes some people might want to try and let's say, feel like they can out-grieve you and show that he really meant so much to me also, that they try to like almost overshadow, okay, the fact that you live with this person for all your life, you've known this person longer than that person, but then sometimes you could just never anticipate or even sometimes articulate how much that person meant to them, and especially in terms of the stages of their life that they met the person. So I know, like, for instance, when Abigail was saying about people who have who have sort of left us, we didn't take offense to that. So whether they come to our house or not, I think it's a thing of like, I don't think I can account for at the minute coming to your house, because what your house represented to me, and having the person who brought me joy not being there feels weird for me. So I probably think the best thing for me to do is stay away, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to feel a certain way towards you. If you said you were going to promise me to do something, I'm not going to feel a certain way. And as Abigail said, in terms of learning to put your trust in God more than in people is such a big thing in that sense. So I'll just pray briefly. So Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for life. And thank you because in all things you're trying to teach us something. And in death and in loss and in grief, that helps us to put life into perspective and helps us to understand why you did what you did on the cross, to die for our sins, basically, Lord Father, and so that we can have life eternal, Lord Father. And just pray for those who have lost loved ones, family members in this moment right now, that you would comfort them. But more importantly, would they see you? Would they find comfort in knowing that you are still there with them, Lord Father? And for those who are, finding it hard to get to come to terms with it, Lord Father, would they find just peace all around them, Lord Father, that allows them to move on? And I pray in this moment that everything that they need in order to move on in the right way, would you, not withhold it from them, Lord Father? Would you just show them that you are near to them, Lord Father, and that you would show them that you are there. And I just pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
And I just quickly want to pray for people that are experiencing loss. But Lord Jesus, I just pray for anyone that so much of their identity was wrapped up in that person that they've lost. And now in the absence of that person, they don't know who they are, or there's just so many questions, and they just feel so lost without them, Lord. And I just pray that over this time of processing what has happened, Lord, that you would just reveal to them who they are as individuals, and that they would just be able to gather strength from that, Lord, that yes, it's been so difficult losing that person, but they still exist, and they still have a purpose, and they still have life left in them, that is meant to be lived, Father God. So I just pray that you would just, help them, Lord, give them the practical things that they need to overcome this struggle that they have, Lord, to cope with the loss. Surround them, Lord, with what they need, Lord, during this time, in the name of Jesus. And I just reiterate that, surround them with what they need to get through. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen. Thank you so much for those beautiful prayers, guys. For those who are listening, if you or anyone that you know need extra support, as you're dealing with grief and loss, there are amazing organizations like Beyond Blue, Reach Out and Headspace, and we'll attach them in the description. And these have loads of helpful online resources to help you if you're experiencing grief.
And not only that, there's churches, places of worship, and even us, we're here to listen and support, and talking to people is so important if you're having a difficult time. There's people out there who you can talk to. Just reach out. So, guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, give us a thumbs up, like, share, comment, subscribe, pass this on to someone. And if you have if there's any topics you want us to cover, please message us on Insta at the Shiv Shae Podcast.
Yes, and like we said, we're on all major platforms: Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google, YouTube. So we're really spoiling you this time. But before we go, Josiah and Abigail, we want you to plug your socials, in case people need a DJ or they need a hairdresser, or even if they need someone to, talk to off the back of today's conversation. So let us know what your socials are.
So I go by the name of The King's Decree.
This is the King's Decree.
I know some people sometimes get it pronounce it wrong by saying the King's degree, but it's the King's. Yeah, that happens a lot of the time.
Did I say degree?
No. You haven't said it. No, but some people have said it
just
before.
checking.
Yeah. So it's the King's decree. So as in basically the King decrees something and it is final. Hence the name. Yeah. So that's me on the socials. Mainly on Insta, to be honest. Actually on Twitter as well, but I don't really use Twitter like that. But yeah, Instagram, IG. Yeah, see me on the King's decree. Yeah, I'm looking forward to DJing out again. I think I might. I'll say. When will I again? I'll say to a few of my friends that I think whenever the next gig I have, basically, or the first gig I have after obviously lockdown 3.0, and it's safe to obviously set up. I think I might actually cry. Just you know what it is. Like, just being able to hear people's reaction, like, hey, it's like, hey, that's my tune.
I can't wait.
Like, oh, reload. Listen, I just think you're just gonna see me just be like, just tears in my eyes, be like, God, I thank you. God, I thank you. Yeah.
I'm gonna be there. And Abigail?
So yeah, on Insta, my personal account is A_OYE16, and then my hair page is A_FROYE hair. Okay, so A3A hair.
Thank you. Honestly, hit them both up because Abigail does a blessing with my hair. And Josiah's a great DJ. But honestly, guys, thank you for listening to the Shiv and Shae podcast. And we are out. Bye.
Bye.